doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.
Last but by no means least, we're going to zip to Accra to Solomon Asamoah to share his remarks and bookend this particular panel. Over to you, Solomon.
Thank you very much, Hubert, and good morning or afternoon, wherever you're hearing this, to all the listeners. And thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this very important initiative and this very important forum. For those who don't know, the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund is a government-owned investment vehicle set up by the government of Ghana to invest and develop infrastructure assets across Ghana. In a relatively short space of time over the last 4 years, we've managed to conclude a portfolio of about a dozen infrastructure investments in about 7 different sectors, covering power, transportation, ICT, mining, etc. And the key point is that for every $1 that we put into an investment, we've managed to raise $10 of other people's money to co-invest alongside us. So the importance of leveraging the private sector and bringing in other resources into our country and into our investments is at the core of what we do. And I think we've managed to do it quite well in the early stages. And I think that philosophy is what is needed across Africa, because as was said in the introduction, the infrastructure deficits are so huge that it's actually daunting. But if you can leverage other people's money to come into that sector, then it becomes manageable. So to do that, it's very important that you structure them appropriately and you structure them so it will meet the criteria of the international financiers. And this is why this initiative, I think, is particularly interesting and particularly powerful. I like to focus on the deployment of the capital, the projects, executing projects quite quickly. It's all good to talk around the issues, but unless we deploy that capital and show a track record relatively quickly, we're going to struggle like many other initiatives have done. So I think it's important that we focus on that. From my perspective, and a couple of these points have already been touched upon, but I think they're really worth emphasizing. The real value of an institution, a Pan-African green infrastructure investment bank, is to provide that leadership, that capital, that access to best practices to share with each of the countries, and particularly each of the national entities that are working very hard in the same space. So I think it's very important that they leverage the national institutions, and none better, I think, than the national sovereign wealth funds of those countries who know the lay of the land, who know the issues, and would very much welcome a strategic partner as they tackle these investments on the ground. So I think that's a very important component that we'll have to make sure it's front and center of the strategy of the Green Infrastructure Investment Bank. I also think that those local entities will also be able to provide a bankable list of projects, or potentially bankable list of projects, that the Green Investment Bank can access and can work closely with them to close them quite quickly and move forward. I think the Green Investment Bank can also provide a source of strategic advice, strategic best lessons, bring them to bear, understand what's happening in Kenya for the benefit of Ghana, for the benefit of Gabon, etc. And so we build that expertise across the continent. I'm sure all of my fellow practitioners on the ground go through the same feeling that I have, that it feels like we're reinventing the wheel every time we do a new investment. So it'd be very good to avoid that feeling and just build on each other's successes and failures. I also think, and the final point that I really want to make, is that we all know that there's a large amount of international capital out there. We also know there's a large amount, more specifically, for climate-related financing. And that capital is finding it difficult to find a home in terms of projects on the ground. So that, and often that funding is concessional, and we can get to that marvelous phrase that everybody talks about, blended finance, which is needed to make many of our projects work. If the Green Infrastructure Investment Bank can really make it much easier to access those international pools of capital. That would be a great service. Anybody trying to do it individually, you know how complicated and difficult it can be. So having a big brother, so to speak, or a big partner who can facilitate that would be extremely useful on the ground in all of our countries, I'm sure. So with those few remarks, I just want to reiterate again that I'm very happy to be associated with this initiative. I think it's got a marvelous mandate, and we look forward to getting going as quickly as possible. Thank you very much, Hubert. That's my remarks.
Okay.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.